So good morning, everybody. Welcome to yet another exciting episode of Marketing Demystified.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And I'm Harpreet, your host for this talk show. Along with me, I have Vikesh. Let me quickly introduce myself. I head marketing for Kangaroo Group. I have about 20 years of experience in marketing. I have held positions in marketing with organizations of high repute like American Express, HCL, and IBM. LexisNexis and EvalueServe. Vikesh, I will request you to introduce yourself before we begin.
Thanks, Harpreet. Hello, everyone. My name is Vikesh Dhyani. I'm a publisher and a marketer. I have worked with organizations like McGraw-Hill, Pearson, LexisNexis, and I now run my own publishing venture, Oakbridge Publishing. I've also started a new online tax knowledge solution recently known as Taxo Online. And I'm looking forward to an interesting conversation with our expert guests today, Sumit and Neeraj, with our wonderful host, Harpreet.
Sure, thank you. Request Sumit to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Shubhit Lai Roy. Lai is in fact my wife's surname, but I've adopted it. I grow people who grow brands, and I make it so simple as riding a motorcycle. I run Univ Brands, which the correct pronunciation would be Univ Brands, but the Univ part is definitely tongue-in-cheek, because if it's a university told, it's the world's smallest university. It has only one employee, but it has students all around the world, and they learn by earning. That's what's different about the university.
Sure, thank you so much. And Neeraj, request your introduction.
Yeah, so my designation says I am SVP LNK Sachi and Sachi, but I see myself in the business of understanding humans, and be it advertising, marketing strategy, whatever. If you know how people behave and why they behave, everything is just cakewalk. So I would just keep it short and simple on that.
Excellent, excellent. Great. So we will start the discussion. Today's topic is understanding the nuances of advertising. So I think the first thing which we should talk about on this topic is, and I will address this question to Sumit, that request you to please enlighten the audience about concept of advertising. How has it evolved over the period of time?
Great. I joined Ogilvy and Mather, and at that time it was advertising. I'm privileged to be with Ogilvy and Mather for 14 years. I learned how to build brands, and they were an advertising agency. Then I used what I learned at Ogilvy and Mather to create a brand for myself. And because I had a background of theater, I was using theater to train people. And I invented a job for myself called resource planning. Have you ever heard of a resource planning manager? What does a resource planning manager do?
See, depends on what resources the resource planning manager is managing. It could be human resources.
There's only, that's right. An agency has only one asset, people. And one other asset, their skills in understanding people, which Neeraj is now has specialized in. So what I did is to say that that's what I will do. I will do human resource development in advertising and skill resource development in advertising. Alec Padamsee heard of this, and he then gave me a lovely brief. At that time, Lintas was fourth in the hierarchy and HTA was up. He said, I want to be as large as HTA, Hindustan Thompson at that point of time, but with half the number of people. So then I started inventing very easy ways of understanding humans so that you can get a brief very well done, and an easy way to create campaigns so that the turnaround time for pitches became 3 days instead of 7 days, etc. Those idea generation techniques made me fall in love with understanding consumers in a way that creates fantastic campaigns. And in 4 years, Lintas became as large. And once I realized that had been done, I invented my own learn by earning advertising school, where the students got paid a check at the end of the month. They didn't get marks. There were no classes. They got paid a check at the end of the month. Okay. Now, from those students, I learned that advertising was not the only way to grow brands, because to earn money, they were creating communication which was not advertising, which was more PR, which was more events, etc. And of course, by that time, all that had also happened. They were creating relationships with their customers. They were doing more relationship marketing, and they were making the customers bring in other customers, which is pretty advanced for 1992. And that's where I did, which is why I changed the university from Bruno Badge to Bruno Brands. Anik Padamsi, by the way, has a lovely word called brandvertising. Advertising has become brandvertising. And paid advertising is not even needed. Okay? You can have paid, earned, and owned advertising.
So like you said, two thoughts which I could get hold of is one, relationship building. Two is customers, getting new customers, which is word of mouth. And third thing which you talked about is not just advertising, but brandvertising. Or like you said, it's earned reputation, it's earned word of mouth. Neeraj, would you like to elaborate on this thought?
So just taking a leaf from what Sumit said, is advertising industry itself has boxed itself into very small world of creating TVC, and the definition itself is changing now. Like, if you say video asset, it can run on YouTube, it can run on Facebook, it can run on TV, right? And the only thing which I hear advertising say about digital, but digital is one added medium. It's not the content. It's the platform which takes the content ahead, right? So just borrowing what Sumit says, if you are in the business of making a relationship as a brand, right, and the relationship will see that how I have a point of view on loyalty itself, so I won't go into detail. So it's about creating content, whether it's 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Content itself is an abused word, right? It's, and advertising is the business of selling. You are not in the business of just entertaining. Whatever helps in selling is the primary view of advertising. If it helps in 10 seconds, if it helps creating stories, if it helps educating customers, it helps telling something that this product has unique, which you will never find anything. Whatever helps in finally making that sale through whatever media is available, through whatever stories at your disposal, and in turns persuade customers by building relationship or just positioning your brand in their mind, or as Sumit says, in their heart. That's how see the advertising job is. And the evolution is a story of how people have chosen what medium at what point of time and what stories, and that's the evolution of advertising in my mind, to put
Sure,
it simply.
I think Neeraj, where you said that it is all about selling, whether you are able to communicate. See, advertising is not just about entertaining, like you said. It is about selling. I will go a step further. It is about communicating. It is about communicating the brand essence to the consumer so that there is more brand connect. Now, as far as that selling angle is concerned, marketing itself is to enable the commercial success of a business, right? Marketing, the bigger goal, I mean, all the, whenever we have those boardroom discussions, they ask that you have parked aside, this much budget. What is the revenue which you are generating? So marketing itself is about selling. One bit
I'd like to come in here on brand essence. Tell me the brand essence of any brand that you know.
I think if we take an example of maybe Pepsi, if the brand essence is to make you feel refreshed, or to make
that's
you
rational.
Feel,
a brand cannot just be rational.
It's to satiate.
So here's the problem, Harpreet.
It's to satiate
our management education teaches so much jargon that it's completely confusing. You're not able to say what business is Pepsi really in.
So it's to satiate the thirst.
No, Pepsi is in the business of helping young people identify with other young people. I belong to the Pepsi.
That's maybe the brand philosophy then.
No, it's the business they're in. It's helping young people create a tribe, the Pepsi generation.
Wouldn't that be the brand philosophy for Airtel?
I have no, it can
Connecting
be.
people.
No, people belong. So as a result of which, when Pepsi cracked this actually in 1984, they got Michael Jackson to come in and do something which completely disrupted Coke, because suddenly Coke become fuddy-duddy. Okay, choice of the generation was their phrase. Now what Pepsi's done very, very well is every year they reinvent, they understand the current generation and find out what's their emotional need. And we'll jump a lot to, there was a time when the young people in India wanted more out of life and they'll manage more work. Next year or very soon after, the same young Indians were making a lot of money. They didn't want to work hard and play hard. Oye Bubbly worked. Youngistan worked. Every time they try and find out they understand the young generation and find an emotional truth that they attach to their brand. Refreshment is never talked about.
So they understood the social fabric.
Of course. And in what is the current choice of the generation? It's a strategy from 1984.
So does it mean, Sumit, that their focus is generally on the younger generation alone? What happens to the generation that moves into a different age bracket after, say, a decade?
No, not at all. So what's very interesting is that people, when I was sort of 40 to 50, I would prefer, because the genes wearing older generation, they want to become like the younger generation. It's not that you're saying that only if you're young. If you are young at heart, you have Pepsi. Coke is fuddy-duddy.
Right, got it.
Okay.
Very interesting. Yeah, pretty interesting.
Okay. Right. So coming back to the point, so it is, if we were to talk about that, like marketing is why is marketing there? Marketing is there to enable selling, right? Marketing, the entire function. I mean, going back to what I was saying. So in a boardroom, we all ask for a budget.
No, I'm going to disagree again. Marketing is not there to enable selling. Marketing is there to create a win-win relationship with customers for lifetime. And this is where Neeraj is going to come in on loyalty.
But it is also, Sumit, connected somewhere to what ROI you are bringing to the table. My promoter would not sign a single penny if he doesn't see that it is translating into sales, and he's going to kill me if this goes unedited.
I agree. In fact, it's something which is not taught very well in India, the lifetime value of a customer.
Yes.
So any Western concept will take a lifetime value of the customer, and they will put an acquisition cost which is much, much higher than the cost of
the cost of retention.
No, much, much higher than the cost of the acquisition costs are huge, because they know that once they come in, they're there for the lifetime.
No, I am saying the cost of acquisition is much larger than the cost of retention. So
no,
that is where
the cost of acquisition is often much higher than the cost of the product.
Yes.
So in those cases, the advertising or the marketing budgets are much, much higher than the sales, because they know that there will be long-term loyalty. Neeraj, I'm giving you your clue.
Yeah. So I'm just coming into this, what Sumit is talking about, the concept of loyalty itself, right? So there are myths which I consider. There are two school of thoughts. One which believe in brand love emotions, and which believe that customers have unflinching divine love for the brand. And there is second school of thought which is propagated by Ban Sharp mostly, it's mostly about mental and physical availability, right? And at the time of it, and he has shown across industries that your heavy buyers actually make up your 2/3 of your volumes and value. At the same time, his suggestion is you always have to tap into the light wires, and which is like not buying at the regular occasion. And that constitutes almost 60 to 70% of the consumers in whatever category you choose, car or cold drink or whatever, right? So the concept of loyalty itself in my mind has somewhere changed. It's not about I swear by this brand and no matter what I will take it, right? It's more
Neeraj,
about
do you use an Apple computer or a PC?
I use PC. I have used Apple also. I am pretty much
Okay.
changed
But
according
do,
to
do
No, no,
you
I think
agree? Do you agree that whenever Apple, at least at the time of Steve Jobs, whenever the only advertising that they needed to do was that one conference in California, where all the loyalists would come there and to know what is the next year's product. And across Apple shops, there would be lines, like the movies that we see of Rajnikant, waiting to see first day, first show. Yeah, loyalty or non-loyalty?
No, so I have the issue with the cherry picking the stories itself. Right?
Okay.
Like, of course, in every boardroom you will tell the story of Nikes and Apples, but the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is 80% of brands are fall into the mass segment, which people don't even have loyalty to. Right. So
Okay. So Neeraj, I'm going to comment. If they crack the emotional truth, even those brands will have loyalty. Most of those brands don't know how to say what business am I really in.
but my question is, why do you need loyalty as a badge that no matter what, I will only buy Apple product, right? And of course, there are certain brands which you are very loyal to, and that's why I'm saying the right of the center. There's a little bit of loyalty, but mostly, most of the brands and most of the people are in this phase where they are either born by inertia, they have been buying a product and buying it, or second, only intervention happens when they hear something new, or new conversation happen, or new categories launched, right? So the concept of loyalty itself, right, to me is not about my commitment to 80 years of whatever customer life cycle value which we're talking about. Like customer life cycle value is, so the guy is the another point which will add to what Sumit is saying, that the same guy buys Coke also and Pepsi also. It just depends on when and what the thing is. So loyalty itself is multi-loyalty, so to say, rather than single loyalty. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah, Neeraj, you're right. But what happens is that the share of heart, if you take the approach of share of heart rather than share of wallet, you will go for loyalty. If you don't take the approach of share of heart and you're okay with, there will always be three brands that I will accept, 3 or 4 brands that I will accept. If you go to anybody's wardrobe, it is not only one brand, there will always be multiple brands. But it's possible to have a share of heart for each of those 3 brands.
Yeah, I agree. I agree on that. So I think only point which I think we both agree on, that there is a set of brands which we are, you are using the word loyal to, and I'm using the word keen disposed to purchasing, predisposed to purchasing. You are calling it loyalty. I'm saying the predisposition for whatever reasons, mental, physical, emotional availability.
Yeah.
So in that way, yeah.
so. Right. So here we agree that there is some predisposition towards a certain brand, right? Now, to reach that stage where a consumer is predisposed to purchase a certain brand, what role does advertising play in that? Maybe Neeraj,
Very
you
little.
can
Sumit
maybe.
will take a shot first.
So first of all, very little. Because if you haven't designed your entire brand experience right, advertising will not be able to help. You first have to be able to answer what business are you really in. And this most brands fail to do. I've seen briefs which doesn't cover it. So as a result of which, the agency or the creative team wants to create advertising that promotes themselves. They want to put their own spin on it. They want to do something disruptive.
Just 1 second. So sorry for the interruption. With a disclaimer that keeping all other factors constant, there is a disclaimer keeping all other factors constant. What role does advertising play in elevating this predisposition?
See, if the advertising reflects the business that you're really in, and that is a branding idea that the consumer will champion by word of mouth. So it is not the number of times that we release the ad, it's the number of times that the consumer shares the idea in the brand to others. If that happens, advertising is always relevant. Accepting that people do not think through what is that word of mouthable element for the brand. It's not just in advertising. You cannot have a word of mouthable ad and not have it in your product, and not have it in your packaging, and not have it in your pricing. Because that's like any consumer can see through advertising make actually that's not their purpose.
So what you are saying is that the same idea, what you are trying to communicate through packing, through your product, through your brand story, through your advertising, if all of them are consistent, then yes. And if that idea is something which people like to talk about.
Yeah. So I am saying that there is this thing about what business are you really in? It's based on an obvious emotional truth, which you can call it consumer insight. I prefer to call it an obvious emotional truth the brand can own. Then you know what business you're really in. And then it actually tells you at whom your brand is aimed. Okay. Then there is an aspect of the persona that you crafted for your brand so that you're different from the others. And then comes a branding idea, which the tribe will want to champion.
So first step is consumer insight.
Yeah.
Capturing the emotional truth. Then is putting into some kind of brief and giving it to the agency.
No, so Harpreet, this consumer insight should not happen at the time of advertising.
Obviously, it is much before, when you are conceiving the product itself.
Yeah. So like, for example, I did here, paperboard, what business is it really in?
Nostalgia.
Absolutely right. But they forgot to brief that to the packaging people. Because the packaging thing has nothing to do with nostalgia. They worked it out on the product, etc. And further, when paperboard is a fantastic case of how you can start a brand without any advertising, because they tied up with Indigo and made a deal with Indigo that that paperboard will be served. Of course, they were getting paid for it. They may not have sold it at the same price as it, but they got hundreds and hundreds of customers that they want to sample the product before even awareness was created about paperboard. Okay. They loved the taste, they loved the product. So when the paperboard was ready to bring it out, well, their distribution network not there. They started creating a relationship with their customer by sampling the product and getting paid for it. Self-financing promotion.
So that is a word of mouth kind of advertising.
No, it's creating a loyalty towards the brand, because when you tasted it, you said, oh, yeah, this is something I had in my childhood. This is something which is different, and I get memories of my childhood. Then they started making their packaging. Actually, Indigo helped them do their packaging a little better because they understood this about time. Much later, when the brand had lots of money, it does a few good ads on nostalgia, because they didn't forget the nostalgia part. But the product design was all nostalgia.
So then if I were to read what you just said, it is about using that consumer insight, and like you said, not just for the moment of advertising, but way before, whatever the consumer insight is, you use that in communicating, you give that in the creative brief, and then basis that the agency will create an ad.
Correct. So the marketing department of paperboard is not worried about their advertising budget. It's not fundamental for them to grow the brand.
What is the meaning of advertising actually, Sumit?
Advertising is paid media. That's it.
Paid media and communicating what the brand wants to communicate,
no,
right?
It's just paid media. There's bad advertising and there's good advertising. You asked me what is advertising?
Advertising is to raise awareness. Advertising then what is the meaning of advertising?
It's just paid communication. Your objective may be awareness. Your objective may be sale. Your objective may be I want personal fame.
Okay.
So just coming in here in terms of role of advertising itself, what Sumit is talking about, building on it and little slight disagreement also. So there are two stories at the same time. One is about the media conversation, which I was talking about, that how the case studies, IPA case studies has proved that share of market and share of voice is a direct correlation. And then you can define what share of voice is. For example, Airtel Girl. You might not have liked the ad, but it was bombarded at you at such frequency that you noticed it, and maybe it reflected in the market share. That's one conversation. But what Sumit is talking about, an interesting bit, is the second part, which is the content conversation and what you want to tell the stories about your brand to the consumers, right? No matter how powerful your stories is, you need a medium to convey people. It could be word of mouth, it could be Indigo Airlines, it could be TVC, it could be Facebook, right? So you need a medium to convey that strong stories and hence make that relationship happen, which Sumit was talking about, right? But there is also a lot of examples where people just go with the pure media power and they build awareness and sales and whatever the objective the brand has decided for, right? Now the question is about the most of the brands who are in the middle, who neither have very strong media money nor have very strong stories to say. And that's where actually the difference and happens, which you need to up. Yeah.
So Neeraj, every product can have a story. Yeah. So once you work that out, you do not need budgets. Because I'll tell you what, I mean, consumer is the medium was invented 4,000 years ago when the pharaohs put up the Sphinx or the pyramids. Because the travelers who went there to buy goods and services remembered that and told others about it. As a result of which, those travelers then went via Egypt. Egypt is not actually on the trail, okay? But it created, today, Egypt doesn't need an advertising budget for its tourism because the tourist is taking pictures with themselves on the Sphinx, etc. They don't need an advertising budget because the word of mouth is so they've got a story which the consumer wants to pass on. So this is the crux of it. If you have a good story that the consumer wants to pass on, you'll always be able to differentiate your brand.
No,
if you
I
don't
agree.
have that story.
My only point here is that it's a very select set of brands who have this power to create word of mouth. In the mass produced area, all your sugars and attas and cars seem like have the same basic features and same thing about. Right?
And I put entirely the business schools to blame for it, because they haven't taught their marketing people this essential question: what business am I really in? They really think that I have one artificial discriminator, etc., for the product, and that's a brand. It's not a brand if it doesn't have an emotion. It's a product with a name tag. You're describing, Neeraj, products with name tags. They're not brands.
See, I will
So
like
what
to
I am saying that
here.
word of mouth is a scarce medium which every brand doesn't have power to leverage on, and hence
But so that's the myth. If you just use common sense, you can generate word of mouth. You don't need money. You just need common sense, curiosity, and empathy, understanding the human. And I
would like to intervene here. While we were debating and discussing, I just Googled myself Oxford. It defines advertise. Okay, what is the meaning of advertising? Advertise is basically describe or draw attention to a product, service, or event in a public medium in order to promote sales or attendance. So basic premise of advertisement is to describe or draw attention to a product. So going back to the example of paper boat.
No, so by this token, Narendra Modi is not advertising.
Narendra Modi is himself 24/7 advertisement.
But is he a product or a service or what?
He's a brand in himself.
Brand.
It didn't say to advertise brands. It says product.
It's to draw attention to a product, service, or event. So himself, he's a product in himself.
Okay, so the moment you create, so what's happened about making him such a strong brand is, did he start with having advertising?
I think his speeches, it says to
did
draw
he pay
attention.
For it then? Did he pay for it then, or did he not pay for it?
He would have been paying so much for those rallies, right?
Yeah.
But that does.
Yeah,
free tea, free coffee, free saris, and free dhotis. So gathering so many people, he would be doing that. I mean, I'm sure this episode will need to be censored.
Detailed for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
No, I
so
love clothes.
just to come in, I think, I think my two bits on this. I think my way I see it is, I think the word of mouth definitely is like a nirvana for any marketer or any brand, right? When consumers start talking about your product or solution on their own, when they start defending your products and solutions on their own, if others object to certain anomalies. But I also feel, Sumit, that some of these things have a slightly longer gestation, right? It takes a while for some of these things to catch up, for the word of mouth to spread. And that's where I personally feel that some paid media, comes in handy to amplify what some customers are saying and broadcast it to others who otherwise, may not have access to, this intelligence or this knowledge, of.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a quick story about, because if I tell you the Starbucks story, Neeraj is going to say, yeah, this is the example, which is, so I'm going to tell you the story of my first client in US. She was a housewife in Connecticut, and the internet happened around 1996, and I used to hang around at a place called Biz City, which is a talk show. And that person asked me to start doing, to become a chat jockey. So I agreed to become a chat jockey. And that's where I met Candle Lady. And in meeting Candle Lady, she was a housewife who was selling candles. So what I said is, no, you're not really in the business of candles. You're actually in the business of romance. Okay. Instantly, she understood. Okay. And that comes to that little bit that you're talking about for Neeraj, for empathy. Candles is not a known brand, it's a product category. As soon as she understood this, she started putting perfume into her candles, potpourri into her candles. She gave a packaging thing which looked awful because she put pink hearts on it. And this time PowerPoint had just about started. All I told her was that just put it around a little so that it's not so obvious. Okay. So her packaging, etc., was done. And then there is a technique that I use called friends of the brand, which is, if you're in the business of romance, who's your competition? It's not candles. I was telling her that flowers is your competition. And this is something I learned from direct marketing. Flowers is your competition. Candy is your competition. Okay. Because people are looking for romance, or perfume is your competition. They're already going there. And I was going to ask, she came up with an idea, which was very, very good. She said, fine dining restaurants. Are they also in the business of romance?
Yes.
Okay. By the way, Candle Lady's target was just to do $5,000 a month, which is almost on the lower income group of housewives in America. She was actually struggling to make ends meet. So she said that there is this fine dining restaurant which is nearby. I said, good, let's make a offer that they can't refuse, which is, if you give me your fortnightly order, I will give you a pair of Candle Lady candles for free for any couple who pays you more than $50. Okay. So this was win-win for the restaurant manager because he was getting a promotion. Okay. So far, no. And what happened was, within 3 months, Candle Lady was earning much more than her income required, because this restaurant manager went and bragged in his annual conference that I've cracked the third base problem. Do you know what the third base problem is in dating? In America, you go to a restaurant, the first date, first base is kissing. Second base is fondling. And third base is, I think you figured out now what third base is, okay? And what he bragged about is, I've cracked the third base. Now, what actually happened was, one of the waiters came with a request from one of the customers, asked Candle Lady to put the candle in the middle of a candle so that it appeared in the middle of the dinner. This idea, which Candle Lady didn't create, I didn't create, a customer created, got translated, and the reputation of that restaurant became, this is where men take you when they're serious. Okay, that generated word of mouth, and that is what solved Candle Lady's business problem. Okay. Where was the advertising? But what did happen is that the romance part and the co-creation by a consumer was where I think brand building has moved to user generated content.
So I think advertising would be, so once that candle was put in there, so after that, the candle lady would have spoken about it in some communication, would have done something, or maybe customers would have spoken about it.
Correct. But nothing that she paid for.
Yeah.
Of course they tweeted.
Yeah.
Of course they posted.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic example. But the point I was trying to make was that, these, how do you then scale it up? How do you take this?
Yeah, I was going to say that. So maybe
If-
only 100 people will
if
talk about that.
any,
But
if
you
any
want to take
brand
it,
wanted to, if any brand wanted to, they can scale it up. She was very happy with $5,000.
Correct.
Okay.
but
if they want,
Sumitji, if you want to scale it up, so then you need to do
No.
some kind of advertising.
no, now let me give you an example of the same thing, which Starbucks. What business are they in?
Providing.
It's called
You
the
know the
third
brand?
place. Yeah? It's called the third
Yeah,
place.
the third
They're-
place. Yeah.
Third place,
Okay.
yeah,
What advertising do they use? What they do is they train their baristas, at least in America, that you write the name. So what happens? They've designed that brand experience to make it the third place. You go to a Starbucks, you're not asked to order. You're given a Wi-Fi connection. You're given the Wi-Fi and you sit over there. They know fully well that if you're going to sit the whole day, you're going to bring in future Starbucks customers because you're going to hold the meeting there. Correct? So they've designed that experience. And when you invite them, you're going to order food. Even if you do all your meetings online, you'll still order food, etc., because that's your office, that's your working place. So they designed their brand experience to make it the third place. They became a little loyal. Okay, actually, that's not true. They probably also understand many other coffee shops now also offer Wi-Fi, etc. What happened is, in America, they don't do this very well in India. The barista is still doing the ritual of writing the name, but in US, etc., they monitor whether the barista, next time that Neeraj comes in, okay, next time that Neeraj comes in, they will address him by name before asking him, putting Neeraj. And how do? They do it in the software, like five-star hotels do it, with face recognition, and I already know who's come, so I can address Neeraj by name. What happened is that maybe in India, they didn't want to invest in the face recognition software.
See, I'm just reading some statistics. Starbucks spends somewhere around $72 to $80 million every year in advertising.
I'm not saying that advertising must not be there, but when they started Starbucks, they didn't have to start with advertising. Now they can afford it easily.
No, right. So then that brings back to the question to what Neeraj was also saying, and I think Vikesh was also trying to say that
No,
if there is
just to finish, in India, have you seen any Starbucks advertising?
They just have launched a communication.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
So what's happened is you can actually grow a brand, and then, by the way, advertising has a very strong role in amplification. So what nowadays brands do is they wait for consumer-generated content. Once the consumer-generated content is working, then they create a version of the ad, which is very professional.
So I have just one point to make here, and I think it's more about seeing the brand and people, right? I think so with what you are saying, and there is a certain coherence, but first let's the two approaches which we differ on. You are basically saying that brand and people are very integral part to each other, and brand matters very much in their lives, right? Where I come from.
No. They currently don't. But if you can create a product story with an emotional, it will matter.
Okay, so I think that's where I think we match. So I come from the world where we see, and everyone is live witness to that, there are so many things to worry about in your own lives, from career to family to kids to movies to go to, that you don't have time to think about the brand, right?
Yeah.
What do you have time to think about is yourself. And where what Sumit is saying, I think that's where it fits and makes sense, is that if you're interested in yourself, how as a brand, I can tell you that how I fit into your story.
Absolutely.
And hence the romance angle, because you are interested in dating, you're interested in
Yeah.
that girl, not interested in that candle lady. Right?
Yeah.
But the candle lady facilitated what your motivations are, and hence it became the part of like a relationship built. Right. And now it's matter of how much it survives. Of course, there are a lot many things, but I think that's where we agree on. Am I right, Sumit?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. So would you agree that there are now let's take a brand category that all will be interested. Brand consultants. There are many brand consultants. Yeah. So there was a guy called Shashank Nigam who came to me. I got this reputation by word of mouth. By the way, Candle Lady then recommended me to their friends, etc. And soon I was earning much more than I was doing in India, which is why I managed to move to Calcutta. And she spread by word of mouth. What she said is that there is this mad, long-haired person in Mumbai who asks you 5 questions and then helps you do your business. So that I've never advertised. Okay, so that apart. Shashank Nigam. So I tend to ask people, what do you enjoy doing the most? Okay, when people can. So Shashank was actually a bit of a silver spoon guy. He was an MIT graduate. He was already writing a blog called Simplifying. And because he was silver spoon, he was already traveling first class. His parents were international in the diplomatic corps, etc. So he told me, I like criticizing the airline that I fly. So I said, good, let's make it into a brand. Then I told him about the 5 questions, because this was a very strong, he immediately, so the 5 questions you'll find in an article that I've written called Brands, What's the Fuss All About? You can send that link to everybody. It asks this question, what's the obvious emotional truth on which your brand can be based? So Shashank said, every airline CEO wants to be ahead of the other airline CEO in technology. Is this true? Yeah. Good insight about CEOs. Yeah. And he knew that he was, and what he then did is that before I completed the rest of the process, he went and interviewed the CEO of Vueling and asked him, what technology are you using to stay ahead of other airlines? And in 2007 or 2008, his blog became a vlog because it was a video blog. He suddenly saw his blog jump up because everybody in Vueling had to see it because the CEO was on it. Okay. What he found out was there were other airlines also watching it. Then he used data to find out which airlines was watching it, then interviewed their CEOs saying, I will also do you a YouTube video like this. Okay. I had also explained to him about self-financing promotion. So after doing 12 interviews, he saw his followers improve and he started getting some assignments. Then what he did is that he charges $5,000 to an airline who wants to know how to stay ahead in technology. He charges for it. He doesn't pay for it. Okay. So now his prospective client was paying him to come and pitch. What did he do? He flew that airline, criticized that airline, and then gave them solutions for it. And that's the brand consulting that he does. Simplifying.com is now the world's largest airline branding consultancy. It's done work for about 80 to 90 airlines. It's also gone into aircraft, airports, etc. And what is amazing about it is that he has 5 employees across the world. The way he recruits the employees is that they must all want to fly 35,000 feet in the air and criticize the airline that they fly. The wise thing that he does is that there's one it's across the world. So all his clients get 24/7 service. Okay. That's brand building. That means look at the number of brand consultants there are. You know, one of the problems about our brand consultants, they don't know how to brand themselves.
True. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry if that was too long a story.
So coming back to advertising for startups which cannot do ads on traditional media, see, what is the way out for them?
Find out the consumer insight, that will find out what's the obvious emotional truth, then figure out what business are you really in, then figure out at whom is the brand aimed, then figure out the persona that you want for the brand, then create a branding idea which the consumer will champion, then design your product, then design your packaging. Unfortunately, there are too many startups who got a product and then they want to become a brand. Whereas it's the other way around. Product is one of the best advertisements that you don't have to pay for. So I'm a huge believer in advertising, but unpaid advertising.
So then product, if I were to talk about products, so let's say if you create a Me Too product, which is a price sensitive product, I would not want to name
all
category.
Products are price sensitive, no?
Right. So if the consumer does not want to buy, okay, I'll give you an example. If the consumer does not want to buy, a retailer will not keep it because the brand is not known. So then where do you start? So
by creating word of mouth. So just now tell me, what is that impossible to create brands for product category?
So let's say I'm in the business of pickle making. Okay, I'm a housewife. I create
excellent,
pickles, right?
excellent.
And what do I do? So the retailer will not keep my brand. Sumit will not purchase
not a
my
problem,
brand
not a
because
problem.
Sumit does not know.
Because frankly, there was such a brand that I know about. It's not that they didn't use advertising; they did. It's called Mother's Recipe. Okay. But when Mother's Recipe was launched, they didn't have enough money. Okay. What is it about pickles? They created a story about a grandmother who creates pickles, etc. And that's what goes into it. That was what the advertising was. Nobody remembers that advertising. But it appealed to consumers, just the label appealed to consumers, Mother's Recipe. Okay. It understood the brand. They started getting picked up. And once you start getting picked up, the retailer wants it.
So for that start, exactly. So for that start to happen, that picking up, so do you suggest that we should do sampling?
No, he actually just put packaging and paid for the packaging in retail stores. He paid, I mean, he bought retail space.
He bought retail space. But retailer himself is not ready to keep your brand.
If I pay him money, he'll keep retail space. Then when the retailer sees flying off the shelf, he won't want the retail space. The retailer wants to make money. They want a product that flies off.
So then basically he coerced the retailer to keep his product
by designing the packaging very well.
So again, bringing back the same point, the only issue with word of mouth is that's uncertain and not in your control. The same with ad going viral.
So Neeraj, that's actually not quite true. Okay.
Let me elaborate a bit.
Sure. Yeah.
For example, what is in your hand is to create a content or ad, and it's the consumer's hand to make it viral or word of mouth, right? So in the pure technical terms, your only job is to create the stories. It's not in your hand to create word of mouth. You can basically make environment for it, but ultimately it's in the consumer's hand to talk about it or not, right? I mean, in that sense, because you.
Okay, let me respond to that. Let me respond to that. Is it in your hand to design the product?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Not in an advertising agency's hand, but it's certainly in the marketer's hand. Okay. Is it in your hand to design the packaging?
Yes.
Is it in your hand to design the distribution or arrange the distribution?
Depending on what money you have. How much money you have.
Yeah. By the way, you also need money to make the product.
Correct.
Yeah. You also need money to make the packaging. So I'm not saying everything is free. You still have to invest, but when you do the packaging, you get an immediate return on the money that you're doing. When you do the product, you get an immediate return. Is it in your hand to create the purchase experience?
So Sumit, my discomfort is that like everything is cost attached. Like distribution has a huge cost to it. Like experience has a huge cost to it. And
no,
if you are
it's
a new
much lower. It's much lower than advertising, where you have to put in at least 5 crores to be noticed. You cannot get noticed now. If you have don't well differentiated, you can't get noticed at less than 5 crores.
Yeah, so again, though, you are talking about TVC. I'm
Yeah.
talking about there are multiple mediums of advertising,
Yeah.
multiple
Now,
media. Yeah.
now, see, even now the ball game has changed completely because your cost per contact is extremely low. Okay. So what has happened is Facebook, etc., all of them, like TikTok's completely revolutionized how communication gets dispersed. And as long as it is user generated content, it will get passed. If it looks like an ad, they will charge you. Okay. And they also encourage that go ahead, let the user generated it. Once you created something which is going viral, then make a very professional version of it and put it on TikTok, put it on social media. Right? And that's very wise because actually you're getting it pre-tested. Now you know what's working. Now, yes, please amplify it. I am not against advertising. Advertising should be done only when you know what is spreading about your word of mouth. It is not, I have to advertise to generate word of mouth. What the consumer is already saying about you, pick that up by listening on social media, then convert it into professional. But
So that's where I come in, that people might not have anything to say about, right? So there are only few products which you would
look,
like to
Neeraj,
talk about.
if the story, if the story is not interesting, if it's nothing, if the emotional thing is not relevant to you, of course you won't talk about it. So you have to find that obvious emotional truth which resonates with you. That is the first step. So what you're saying is understanding humans is the first step. Okay. And you then don't have to translate it into an ad. You then have to translate it to product, pricing, packaging, purchase experience, etc. You'll also find this in the article that I've written about consumer as the medium. Okay. Because like for example, there is a brand in Bangladesh called Mum, which is a mineral water. And there's nothing that Aquafina or Kinley can do to displace it. Do you have any idea why Mum is so popular in Bangladesh?
Because of the word, because of the emotional connect,
Yeah, what is the emotional connector?
the love of mother.
No, it's because in Bangla and frankly all over India, the first word that a child says is for water is mum, 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 mum. And this connects immediately with the Bangladeshi. Okay. And it is seen as Bangladesh's mineral water. As a result of which they may have done some advertising, etc. But what happens is that all in Bangladesh, there's still the culture that the newspapers take political photographs. Okay. When the ministers are out, if it's a Mum bottle, they will put it up. If it's a Aquafina bottle or a Kindi bottle, they will put it down. So every day they were getting free exposure because of the packaging design. And the packaging design was done entirely intuitively. There was no account plan. The packaging guy said, "Oh, mum, made," and it's a very anglicized design. And the poor agency just charged 1 lakh of Bangla taka for it. And it's now Bangladesh's strongest brand. That's another problem about marketing communication agency of the past. They have no idea how to charge. Okay. Because we were born on 15% of advertising. See, I'll tell you why advertising is such a big thing. The organized industry said, I have to have a budget and you will get 15%. I'm talking about the origins of advertising. So every advertising agency learned how to increase the budget because their income depended on it. True? Okay. Till there came a time that it was becoming such a large amount that the marketing company, no, I'm going to give 3% to media. I'm going to give 12% to you. And then that soon became fees. And then soon became, because the margins got reduced. And now most in the advertising industry cannot hire good talent. Okay. Neeraj, do you agree that's the problem?
Yeah, of course.
And the root of it is on budgets in advertising. Is this conditioning that advertising has to have budgets. Whereas what the new agencies are doing is they charge a fee, they have success fees, and they're very good at defining what to be measured. And that has nothing to do with number of likes and shares. It has to do with the number of customers that you acquire and retain.
Sure, thank you. Neeraj, can we can I request you to conclude the learnings from this? Because I think we
Yeah.
have spent an hour on
Sure,
the entire
sure.
discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so adding, so basically summarizing what Sumit is saying and adding my own bit of it in a bit. So advertising is, in my opinion, is a simple way to make people aware about what you are in business of. Right now, what makes it successful, and that's what Sumit talks about: bad and good ads. What makes it successful about what other elements you have in the mix. It could be product, it could be design, it could be emotion, and that's the difference between good ad and bad ad, right? And there are two parts of it. One is paid, which Sumit is talking about. Right? You paid and people will talk about it, doesn't mean people will connect with it. And there is unpaid, which is a true reflection of consumer connect with the brand, because that's you are not paying with, and people are generating content on there itself. So it's a unpaid, which is a true measure of brand love, and hence the relationship a person has with the brand. So that's the difference between advertising, word of mouth, paid, unpaid, and no matter how you want to talk about it. And that's the basic tenet which Sumit is talking about, that if you aim for unpaid advertising, your measurability of success is much quicker and much easier. And create a product experience design which feeds to unpaid advertising, even if you don't have money for paid advertising, because that's the simple way anyone can do it. That's my conclusion. Sumit, feel free to add to
Yeah,
it.
pretty. I'd like to add that most people who ask for advertising don't know their business targets. They have no idea of how many customers they have to acquire, what sales. They usually want an advertisement that will be liked and shared, or everybody will talk about. They don't start their brief with it. They don't know the measurability of how many customers do I have to have, or am I trying to retain customers? Am I trying to grow my customers? Okay, so that's a fundamental problem in the briefing system, because usually those who are looking for marketing communication do not have a clear idea of the business target.
And just adding to what Sumit is saying, what I have seen practicing advertising, that even if they have idea what they want to achieve, right, they are too much attached to talk about their product, even if it's not of relevance to the end user. Right? So whenever you have the emotion built much more than the product, they will pull you back and ask you to put these 5 features of the product. It doesn't matter whether consumers will talk about those features or not. Right? And that's where also leads to the wastage of advertising, because no one wants
Yeah.
to listen about 5
Feature.
things your product does, which might not be relevant for me. Right? They might be interested in interesting story to tell, whether it's about product or about their lives or in general. At least they will watch and they will know ki it's produced by certain brands, and there are some awareness built in. So that I will add to what Sumit is saying.
I agree. So
I agree to what Neeraj just said. So at times there is something called reason to believe, right? If you talk more about the product features, more about reason to believe, if you don't put that, then there are people who will say, this ad is not relevant. You have put a lady model in front of a car.
This art to
It's not
be and
relevant.
reason to believe, and insisting that it is there in the ad, is a 20th century concept.
No, just
The consumer.
let me
Yeah.
let me complete. And
Yeah.
if you overdo it, then there are people who will come back and say that emotional
Okay.
connect is not there. You have overdone it, so it's like overboard. So I think
Okay, so
Neeraj,
let me give you some advertising that has generated word of mouth, because it becomes part of the communication. It become part of language. Take a break. Which brand am I talking about?
Kit
Kit
Kat.
Kat.
KitKat.
Acha, I've given you the reason to believe that Kit Kat is a good brand.
No, because the tagline became so popular.
That's it. You've given them a word of mouthable idea you can champion. Where's reason to believe? Even in the advertising, where's the reason to believe? It's just they just do very interesting ad which gets viewed in the understanding. Take that break. Next. dirt is good? Which
Sorry.
brand?
दाग अच्छे हैं. Surf Excel.
Daag acha hai.
Daag achhe hain. Okay, Surf Excel.
Which brand?
Surf Excel.
Surf Excel, I think, yeah.
Oh, and when the consumer is also making stories about dirt is good and shooting videos about dirt is good and putting it up, they put the reason to believe.
No, so there in that ad there is a reason to believe that कितना भी गंदा हो वो साफ हो जाएगा. So that is the
When-
reason to believe. You know, you have seen that Sanjeev Kapoor ad where he, I think that's an aerial ad, where he takes that truckload of dirty clothes and he roams around the whole city. And then he says, you know, the reason to believe is that no matter how dirty the clothes are, it will again be white and shiny because Ariel is there.
Okay, so help me share the load. Which brand am I talking about?
Ariel is share the load.
And the reason to believe is?
The way it is picturized, that it will become clean and
How is that a reason to believe? Where
There is no product RTB. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Ariel, no, but in Ariel, when they start, see, in Ariel, they have a series of ads. They started with those micronutrients. If you remember that, initially when they started showing those micronutrients that these are there and that is why the clothes will become super shiny.
So
Then they had that RTB, very
my
strong
problem with
RTB.
reason to believe is that you're assuming that word of mouth is not your most powerful medium. Because no consumer is ever going to quote reason to believe when they're telling them about it. They are going to quote what resonates with them. Okay? And if you ask a consumer, why do you like it? He said, no, acha hai. That's it. But they will pass it on.
Here,
And-
Sumit, I have a different point of view. So, for example, let's say I trust Vikesh. Okay, Vikesh is a good friend of mine. I trust what Vikesh is going to tell me. Okay,
Yeah.
no, hear me out.
Yeah.
Vikesh uses Ariel. He says, and Vikesh himself is a reason to believe to me because I trust him as a friend. It's not the brand, but it's my association with him. Tomorrow he tells me that, you know, Arpit, Ariel I have used. My daughters, they soiled when they were playing and it's really good. You should try. Now,
But he's never going to tell that story. What he's going to tell is that there are two children being grown. Are you training them to share the load? That's the story he wants to share. He doesn't want to sell you Ariel. He has no interest in being the salesperson for Ariel. He is in
it wouldn't be salesperson for Ariel. So I'll give an example of a movie, right? Recently I went and saw Lal Singh Chaddha. And I told him that, you know, it's a nice movie. He said, no, we should go and see Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump. You forget about Lal Singh Chaddha, right?
The original.
Now, when I told him, I said, no, movie ko pehle you don't write it off. Just go and see it once. So maybe because I said it and I said it about the movie, not what the theme of the movie was, maybe he'll go and see it. Because it is coming from me, that is why it will be a big enough reason for him to believe. If he trusts my sensibility though.
Yeah. Which is people buy brands recommended by friends and relatives. It's an emotional connection. There's nothing to on reason to believe over there. By the way, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a reason to believe, but you don't have to communicate it.
See, that is where I slightly disagree.
Okay, all right, Arpit, let me just take you a little further. Even taglines are out of date. Okay, let me prove that to you. What is iPad's tagline?
No idea.
What is WhatsApp's tagline?
There's none.
Has that brand spread? WhatsApp?
That's the usability, Sumit.
Has the brand spread?
It has, and I'll tell you why.
Is there a tagline?
I'll tell you how I got initiated in WhatsApp. It was, I think, about 2015. One of my very close friends was using WhatsApp, and I was told that, you know, it's very easy to communicate. And because I trusted that person, so I started using it. And I found the experience good, so I shared it further.
It's more likely that you said, look, what's your WhatsApp number? And that other person would say, oh, WhatsApp, what's WhatsApp? And now you've got it. Because it's a tribe of people who use WhatsApp. Okay. Further, what's Facebook's tagline? What's Google's tagline? A little shocking, no?
Yeah.
Are these one of the most famous brands not supposed to have a tagline? This is the reason why they've discovered consumers do not want to speak in taglines other than taglines that have become part of the syntax. It is, if you make the tagline part of the culture, fantastic. That's really great. But consumers don't want to be seen as advertising when they're recommending a brand.
वैसे Facebook का tagline है, it's free and always will be.
You have to look it up.
Yeah, I have to look it up.
Yeah.
Also,
then you're not going to use it with word of mouth.
Yeah. Also, I think, some of these brands have become so generic that, you say that, okay, you don't say you SMS it to me, you say you WhatsApp it to me, right?
Wait.
Google it, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, you see, the word generic means that other brands can replace it. If a brand is generic, is in trouble. It's a little like Xerox became generic and Canon made a lot of sales.
See, because there is a concept called category excellence, right? Nowadays, we don't say go and search it. We say go and Google it. No matter you are Googling it on Bing, no matter you are searching it on Yahoo is obsolete, Bing or any other search engine, you say just go and Google it. Similarly, when we talk about photocopy, the Xerox has taken category excellence. So we don't say just go and do photocopy. Maybe with any other photocopier machine, we just say go and Xerox it.
But that could also work in against your fear, what Sumit is saying, and I have experienced it firsthand when I was working on Bisleri. One of the briefs given to us was that everyone asks for Bisleri and settles for whatever water bottles are given.
Yes.
And that was the challenge which was thrown to us, and hence we came up with a campaign which is hugely successful and awarded, is Bisleri nahi to pina nahi, and the whole Camel commercial. So we designed the whole experience about connecting with bringing thirst back, because the moment you become generic, it's an advantage to a certain extent for initial years, and then becomes also because people are happy taking Aquafina, Bele, whatever are given. They only mean Bisleri means water. So that's, I think, what Sumit is trying to talk about.
And that allows me to segue into most advertisement briefs do not have a smart objective. Neeraj's requirement was not create awareness; it was to change perception.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a perfectly valid objective. And you might want to change perception of only a handful of prosumers, all pharma products. They want to change the perception of the doctor, who will then recommend. Okay. In every category, there is what I call a prosumer, a person that people trusts to recommend on it. Okay. And that person may not even use a brand. Like chances are, before you bought a mobile phone, you asked a friend which mobile phone, and you went by his or her judgment. So there are people who will aim at the techies to do reviews. Okay.
Right.
Okay. I just want to add to this. I will send you a link on for the thing for brands, what's the fuss all about, and there are 5 questions there. It's an open offer to anyone who's listening over here. If you know how to answer those questions, then your brand, you don't need my help. If you don't know how to answer those questions, just send it to me. I will help for free. Okay? Because at the end, once even telling you how to answer it is not enough, because you still have to implement it. When you want to implement it, then you'll ask for coaching. See, how many of you know how to ride a bicycle? Yeah. How many of you know how to ride a motorcycle?
I know how to ride a Sunny.
Okay, good. And there is a training program that you went for. Did you go to a college? Did you go to an institute to learn?
No.
Somebody rode pillion and showed you the gears. That's what I do. I ride along, which is why I always do one-on-one coaching. It's not one continuum. Okay?
Very nicely said, Sumit. Very nicely said.
So that's the reason my email ID is mobike@gmail.com.
Excellent.
Okay.
Great.
I think this session has already gone very long, but I would have liked to talk about one myth which maybe in later chapter, that rational, emotional itself, the classification, it doesn't matter. And what I want you to talk about, the even rational is emotional, given the Volkswagen ad where they talked about rational bit very emotionally sense. So maybe it's a matter of for other, and it's about the response you generate rather than input you feed. So
Right.
maybe that we could talk later
And
on.
that's why I came at Harpreet like a tongue on bricks when she said art to be, because it's much better to say art to F, which is reason to feel.
Yeah, and
And
I
reason
think, just to add to what you were saying, Neeraj and Sumit, in the battle between what to chase, the minds or hearts, I think it's always useful to go after the heart, because if you win the heart will find a way to convince the brain.
Oh, I think I mentioned how to measure share of heart. Do you want me to tell you about how to measure share of heart?
Yes. Yeah,
Yes,
please do.
definitely.
So this is something that I learned from direct marketing or relationship marketing. So what happens in there is that you always keep data on your customer. You have to know name, address, etc., what the name of the dog is, what, etc., etc. You have to know. Okay. You have one little thing saying that when the new customer comes, you always ask, I'd like to thank the person who recommended you to me. Okay. And then you send a thank you card to the old customer as well as the new customer. Then on an Excel sheet, you can track how many new customers this person is referring you to. The proportion of your existing customers to the ones who are referring is your share of heart.
Interesting. Yeah, very nice.
Okay.
Something close to NPS, but not exactly.
It is. But Net Promoter Score has been packaged and marketed and is very expensive to do. This you can do on an Excel sheet.
Correct.
You just have to believe that I'm going to have a relationship with my customer. And isn't it common courtesy to thank a new customer and the old customer?
It is.
Of course.
Absolutely.
That's it. Which is why all my non-NBA clients from all over the world happily use this Excel sheet to know their share of heart.
So thanks to Neeraj and thanks to Sumit. So Neeraj is the old customer and Sumit is the new one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right. He's the one who referred.
Yeah. No. I mean, I did not say thank you. I was just giving an example.
No, but it's right. In fact, yeah, that's it.
Correct.
I
just
he's the one.
implemented the learning.
Yeah. Okay.
Excellent.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Bye.
So no. I mean, still it's not over. So we are still.
Oh, it's not over.
Yeah.
There are
So
questions?
no, I think there were many questions, but the discussion went into a different direction. But nevertheless, we enjoyed it. So like Neeraj summarized it, it's, I think the whole essence of advertising is that the brand building story, whatever is there from the beginning, from that consumer insight, that is something which should translate in your communication, in your packing, in your product, in your pricing, everything. And then advertising, like both of all of us agreed to, that advertising is paid and not necessary. All kind of advertising is necessary, and advertising should be done if it is relevant. And obviously, the first step should be word of mouth.
I'm just going to make one little difference to that. Please do not communicate that you can think of the consumer insight when it comes to advertising. You have to think of the consumer insight before you start your business.
Yes.
Unfortunately, people create a product, then they come to an advertising agency, abhi consumer insight nikalo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And that's a huge fallacy. Yeah, huge fallacy, big problem as to why brands do not succeed.
Sure. So I really thank both of you and Vikesh also for taking time out on Sunday afternoon. And we had a lovely conversation.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Very different session, but very, very lively, very engaging, and very exciting too. So
I was on toes, and I'm sure Vikesh was also.
Yeah.
And an open offer to any of your listeners. If you want to learn by earning, you can just contact me.
Great.
Sure.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks a
Fantastic.
lot. Take care.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
In this particular episode of Marketing Demystified, we have explored different nuances of advertising and media planning, how advertising has evolved over the ages, what actually is an advertising process, how that impacts the brand, and how important it is for the brand. Understand this and many other concepts as we discussed in this particular episode. And do like, share, and comment for further reach and benefit of the wider audience. In case you like the content, then do subscribe to our channel Marketing Demystified on YouTube. Thank you so much.